Kia ora te whānau. We'll open with a karakia. Tēnō i tātou. Waka taka te hau ki tūru, waka taka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi aki ana te ata kura, he tio, he hoka, he hauhu, ti hei mauri ora. Mauri ora. Nau mai and welcome everyone to our first of 3 seminars with archives. And I'd just like to hand over to Tyler to lead us into the introduction. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Gail. Kia ora e te whānau. Thank you all for coming to Archives and the introduction to Archives New Zealand, along with some of my colleagues here on the screen. We are having a go at something quite different for Archives in terms of the webinar setup. So any kind of questions or any feedback, will be circulating a bit of a survey in the coming days so that you can get back to us, because this setting might not work, but a Zoom setting might work better for all of us together. I guess in terms of housekeeping, the Q&A section in the below menu is where you can add your questions, and the team will be able to answer them as we go through this webinar, as well as putting any questions in the chat. All this information will collect up together and be able to answer it over the coming weeks, or within the session over the coming weeks, or at our next webinar. Also for everyone, we are recording this series so that we are able to pass the file over to Di and Gail to circulate wider and be able to review some of the kōrero that we talk about, as well as going into the future. As a part of our kind of introduction to Archives New Zealand, I guess I would like to hand it around our team to be able to introduce themselves just briefly, and what their roles are for Archives New Zealand before we kind of dive into a bit of a presentation. So ko Tyler Aho, I'm the Auckland Regional Archivist, as well as a Ohu Hapori member, and we look after the Upper North Island region up in Auckland, as well as overall for all of Tamaki. I will pass over to George.
Ka te tēnā tātou e te whānau, ko George Haimona tōku ingoa, heuri tēnei no te waka o te arawa. Tainui mātātua me Aotea. Kei konei, kei te rotorua nui a kahumatava moia hau e mahi ana i tēnei wā. Hoi anō kei tāmaki taku tari, kei pōneke taku tīma. So go figure. Kia ora everybody, my name is George Haimona and I'm the Principal Advisor Services to Māori, based in Rotorua. My office is in Tāmaki, and my team, a lot of my team are in Wellington, so it's a little all over the place trying to cover the motu. Hui anō, happy to be here with you all. Unfortunately, I'm tied into another kaupapa tonight. Some unforeseen circumstances have roped me into another kaupapa, but I will be here in the background. Happy to be here with you all, and can't wait to build the kaupapa going into the future. Mihi nui ana ki a koe Dai, e whakahaere nei i ngā kaupapa mo te iwi. Nō reira, kia ora rā. Ka whiua atu ki a koe Joe.
Kia ora tātou. He uri ahau no tāpiti no ingarangi no airani oku tūpuna. Kei o Tuatahi e noho ana ko Joe Condon tōku ingoa. I'm Regional Archivist for the Christchurch office, and we have records for Canterbury, West Coast, some for Nelson, Marlborough, and some for Wharekauri as well. Our office is in Wigram, near the Air Force Museum. For those of you that know Christchurch, we had an office in town that had some earthquake damage, although thankfully the archives were safe. And so we have a beautiful brand new office in Wigram, and that opened in 2018. And in 2020, the Ngāi archive team also moved into our building. So that's been something new for us. So great to be here. Ka nui te mihi ki a koutou katoa. And I'll pass to my colleague, Rosie.
Kia ora, ko Rosie tōku ingoa. I'm very happy to be here, thank you. I've worked at archives about 14 years now, so a senior archivist in Tuatahi, and I love the job, love helping people find records pertinent to them, and so very nice to be here and meet you all. Thank you. Kia ora.
I think perhaps I'm the last person from the archives cohort here this evening, so I'll introduce myself. Ko Chrissy Knight, tōku ingoa, no whanganui a tara ahau, kei te romahara o te kāwanatanga ahau e mahi ana. Ko te maiatanga, digitisation, tōku rōpū mahi, tēnā koutou katoa. So I greet you all warmly this evening. It's a real privilege to be able to connect with you. It's a very exciting moment. I work as an archivist in the digitisation team in the Wellington office. So I think there's some real opportunities here for us to be able to collaborate, and for us in Wellington perhaps to understand what are important records for you that we might be able to then make them digitally available that you can access online, you know, from wherever you are in the multi. Kia ora, I'll hand back. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou te whānau, ko anei morihi tōku ingoa ko au te kaihautu o te rua mahara. E noho ana au I te taha o Taila, I te tare o Tāmaki, e rangi oriti ia hori, ko te nuinga o takitima ki kei Poneke. You know, great to be along, and I'm still learning the ropes, so I'm in my 7th week. So I started my 7th week, and I'm here to make sure, because part of my role is about engaging, and I want to see how this works for one, encouraging the future engagement alongside Ngāti Mutunga, but also when we have other whānau that want to come on board like this, then we're able to see how that, you're pretty much our guinea pig. So ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa Ngāti Mutunga, kia koe dai, nā I ārahi tēnei kaupapa, I whakamārama mai kia mātou katoa, te hiahia o tō whānau, nō reira tēnei te mihi.
Kapo, thank you everyone from Archives for your brief introductions, and I guess we're going to jump into our presentation where we have a few slides that we have been able to put together around Archives New Zealand and the type of work that we get through and the sort of holdings that we have. With that, there'll be a few bits and pieces where my colleagues will jump in and be able to describe a few things in a little bit more detail than even myself, and then we'll go into our Q&A and open up the session for a bit of a questions and answers. So jump in here. So nau mai ki te rua mahara o te kawanatanga. We are Archives New Zealand, and part of our mahi is to look after the government records and make them accessible. We are very much governed by the Public Records Act 2005, and so part of that includes our responsibilities not only for how records come into Archives New Zealand and how government agencies are recording their information, as well as we set the standard for how we look after records while they're with Archives New Zealand, and how they can be registered in a way that ensures accessibility for all New Zealanders to be able to access the information to hold their government to account. Part of Archives New Zealand's origins came in 1957, so that was when Archives New Zealand was formed as an entity to look after these records, partly because of the history of government records prior to that point. The fire at Hope Gibbons building in 1952 being a big catalyst for a lot of records being lost at that time, and even today where we're still coming across records in those states of conditions. One record that we recently had through a digitisation program of the Māori schools, the native schools, was very much in a burnt condition, and the edges were singed. So as a part of that, Archives New Zealand was created in a way to protect that from happening. It doesn't necessarily mean that we were able to prevent other losses that happen to government records along the way, because of just the sheer volume of documentation that's created by different agencies, but we definitely give it a very good go to get the majority of it. So again, across over our 4 sites, we have in Auckland, Tāmaki Makaurau, we have an office, as well as Wellington as our head office, Christchurch, and then Dunedin as well. So part of each office is that we're looking after the rohe around us to be able to ensure that records are close to where they have been created or to the people that are reflected in those records. Definitely aspirations for it to grow further afield, whether that's physically, but most definitely in the digital sense will be is quite a significant driver for Archives New Zealand. From there, it's as well as we've got a pretty small team in terms of other government agencies, but we're quite agile in the responsibilities that we do cover off. And for the quantity that we do look after, upwards beyond 7 million items within the holdings. In Archives New Zealand, and this is again something that Rosie could probably speak to in great detail as well, is that we have Ohu Hapori, who are our team working within Archives New Zealand. Ohu Hapori usually we have an inbox that any inquiries that come through from iwi or Māori researchers asking for specific support or accessibility to records in archives will come through that avenue, and we'll be able to put a bit of a wraparound service from the different team members who are part of that to support and enhance that opportunity. It also has the ability to work around the digitisation project as well, where records of interest can be scoped, prioritised and digitised in a more, I guess, urgent pipeline compared to our general pipeline that all our officers are working towards. Of course, we would usually do a in-person tour of our repositories, but considering the COVID landscape that we've had over this period of time, this is kind of where our new ground is, where we're looking at how we can deliver this type of information in a more digital way compared to in person. But of course, there will always be an opportunity that anyone visiting our 4 sites, different sites, could get in touch with the team, and I'm sure we're more than happy to take people behind the scenes to be able to see how records are looked after in these 4 buildings. Another avenue for iwi and Māori researchers is definitely the Te Ara Taonga approach, where we are a part of a wider group that is looked after by Ministry for Culture and Heritage. In some respects, it's about collecting up all the different agencies to be the one car pulling up the driveway, and having all of our ears listening to what the aspirations and the priorities are for iwi, and being able to respond as a collective to make access that much more easier again. We all have our different specialties between Te Papa and National Services, who are looking more in that museum space. Ngā Taonga, who have the audio visual, as well as National Library, who have publications. Part of the, I guess, history of Archives New Zealand to date is that we do have, 7 million archives that have been created and used by New Zealand government, being that we go back to 1840, which the Te Tiriti o Waitangi, as well as He Whakaputanga and the suffragette petition, are part of our holdings, but doesn't necessarily live within the archives building. Rather, it's on display in He Tohu. Part of that rationale is because the building that we currently occupy in Wellington is on its way out in terms of infrastructure, and so part of a wider program in Archives New Zealand at the moment is developing a brand new building and a storage facility for all records. We were quite fortunate in the sense that we've got space right next to National Library, which will then create a bit of a campus between National Library, Ngā Taonga, and Archives New Zealand, and the records and collections that we all look after, making it a bit of a one-stop shop for all those people that go into Wellington. Again, He Tohu as an exhibition was, over the past decade, I believe, was a new display at National Library, so that it was accessible for all New Zealanders, as well as those that have interest in knowing our foundational documents. And part of that relationship also then grows further into our engagement with National Library services to schools. So He Tohu was able to be developed into a bit of a digital component as well, that currently sits in Auckland, but I believe is something that they're keen to travel far and wide. Again, a bit of background on Archives New Zealand is that not everything has been that's been created has been saved and archived. Very much there's material there that wouldn't have been a part of the transfers from government agencies to Archives New Zealand, but there's also some very definite things that don't exist with Archives New Zealand, being the birth, deaths and marriages, which does sit in DIA but is not with Archives. Again, publications and books and all the rest of it, personal diaries, as well as passports, car registrations are not Archives New Zealand. You'd probably do with a bit of a Google on those ones to get you to the right place, but we do a lot of the other material which all can be found online on our webpage, but also in our database that we have available. We recently shifted from our old Archway, which was our previous database, and now we're into collection search, where collection search is a bit of a new platform that we're still experiencing and learning all together, and finding a bit more of a bit more details where we're looking for feedback on how we can make that database that much more stronger and more user friendly for all our people who use it to view records. I guess the last bit in terms of our presentation for today is around Te Maiatanga, which is quite a massive digitisation project with across Aotearoa. So being able to provide access in a way that doesn't privilege locations is providing it digitally. Of course, there's a whole lot of kōrero that can go around that, and I'm not the expert. And we do have part of the experts here with Chrissy, but I guess it's a bit of information. So here's a bit of a video to stop me from talking, and I'll share it here now. So I guess the one thing that I forgot to do was tick the audio and sound, where I was able to share the kind of easy breezy music in the background there. So my apologies. But we'll share the link around for that webpage if you ever want to check it out on YouTube, as well as share this PowerPoint with everyone so that they're able to view it in their own time, because I know I'm whizzing through some of this information quite fast. Again, for Archives New Zealand, other ways that we're able to kind of share our profile and our platforms further afield is our different social medias, where we're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and also our Flickr account, where a lot of the digitized material from across the Mutu is featured on Flickr under different groupings. So definitely check out Flickr to find some kind of interesting and neat content that fits everyone's desires. And I guess coming to a bit of an end with our presentation is that, of course, our collections database is available online. It does require a RealMe login, which is part of the, I guess, government caretaking of the information and being able to provide a secure line. And there's a small sign up process to get on Collection Search. From there, you're able to request digital copies or request viewing in reading rooms from that portal, and it's able to record record what you're searching, so you don't have to search that over and over again or save your searches to any one place. It now goes to that profile. And I guess a little bit of information in terms of our reading rooms, where you're able to order 5 records at a time. There's no limit. If you can get through heaps of records, then that's something that we're always keen to offer, as well as archivists that are on site to provide that support and help, and a bit of information around our opening hours.
Tyler, there was just a wee question about does everyone have a RealMe account? So just to explain that it is something that you need to sign up for yourself if you don't already have one.
Yes, so RealMe is a bit of a government or what would you call it? It's a portal that we all have around, say, the COVID My Vaccine Pass, but also it's there for IRD, student loans, all that kind of material, all in that one space. So definitely we can share the links to how to get a RealMe and any support that you may need from that. So I guess I'll kind of open it up, and if anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We also have a few questions that was circulated around the in the registration when you registered. So if there's no questions that come up in the chat, we might jump to some of that information. Or if anyone wants to put their hand up and can unmute themselves.
Kia
ora, Tyler. Thank you for the presentation. I just wondered, one of the things that we're linking to in our ma'i with He Matapi'i no Mua is te reo. And just wondering, does archives hold material that's in te reo? And Chrissy may be able to tell us, but has much of that or any of that been digitised?
That's a lovely question, Di. Yes, Archives has a lot of material in te reo. A lot of it is, the early records are handwritten. So as we digitise things, they're not necessarily text searchable, but you get that record, you know, sort of like the photograph of a page of handwritten script in a lot of that beautiful classical elegant sort of language, and a lot of the early letters that were written, and petitions to government, especially regarding land issues. So yeah, there's a vast quantity of te reo records, and one of the projects that we've been involved with is books in Māori. We've been working in partnership with National Library on that to we have some of the items that are indexed in that record books in Māori, so we've been working towards getting those digitised to sit alongside what National Library's doing. So yeah, that's it from kind of my perspective. I don't know whether Rosie or Joe want to jump in. They may have some other records that they know from, you know, closer contact, or Tyler from their own collections in the regions. I'll hand that over again.
Kia ora. In our office in Christchurch, majority of what we'd have will be from Ngāi Tahu individuals, again 19th century correspondence, but we do have a letter book of Shands as a magistrate in the Chatham Islands. So I believe in that letter book there would be the odd letter in te reo. It has been digitised, and we can forward you the link to it. Yeah, so I think we'd have a small amount in our office for sure.
Yeah, nothing really to add there, but yeah, I've definitely seen some letters in te reo in those magistrates letter books. So that's and they are all luckily digitised. So as Rosie said.
Something else that I should have added as well is we do have whakapapa. They are often contained in records, so that's certainly an area that we're really looking to work alongside iwi to make sure that we're dealing with it sensitively and with a good understanding, and making sure that we are giving access in a way that's appropriate. So there's a lot of you know, we're really keen to have some conversations about some of this. And so once you've gone through this process that Tyler's described of setting up a Real Me account, and we can coach you in how to search, and you'll be able to start then finding some things that might be of interest to you. And then from there, that's where you'll really be able to share some of your expertise with us about what you know about these records, about the people who are named there, or the places, or the stories that are associated with these things. And that's where, you know, I think at that point, that's where the real partnership or the real exciting moment can kind of happen, where there can be a real exchange between us.
There are a few more questions coming through on the chat. Someone's asked what the best way to search for Chatham Island in Ngāti Mutunga material is, which is kind of a big question. And Tyler's mentioned our collection search tool, but I think as Chrissy also mentioned, some of the names or the places that you are searching for it kind of doesn't quite work as a Google. It's not quite that good in terms of you know, with the handwritten books, that some of the names and people and places might be handwritten in the books, but we might not have made a record of that in our database. So I guess this is why this process is going to be really helpful for us to understand a bit more about what you will be looking for and how we can help share our expertise in helping find things.
I guess as a part of that, it's probably a little bit helpful to see what we're talking about in terms of collection search. So this is our landing page being shared on the screen at the moment, where you can kind of see a variation of our search menu. Of course, there's an advanced search option there, as well as where you sign in and other kind of helpful details around the archives database. There's some resources here that can support with your research, how to search, as well as help with the user guides. So it just is all quite clear in terms of the information that's there. It is sometimes a little bit slow, and I can see it's loading up in the corner, so it's probably going to prove me right tonight. But it gives you a really helpful guide on how to search and filter through the information. Again, if we were to search under different variations of Wharekauri, it may bring up different results because it's what's been listed in the title of those records, rather than within the content. So of course it's always a tip of the iceberg where you get an identification of the records and then start to drill deeper and be able to for, I guess, in in an analogy, chase the rabbit in terms of being able to find that information and using one record to link you to the next record. Do we have anything else to talk about in terms of collection search from Rosie, or?
Yes, I just reiterate that the titles of records aren't always intuitive, and so certainly do contact an archivist or the Ohu Hapori team. And on that homepage, you should be able to find a link for Ask an Archivist, or we can send you the email for the Ohu Hapori group. There are also research guides on that website as well that you can link through to, and they're thematic. And so there is one on Māori resources as well. But certainly I just always encourage people to ask if you're not getting anywhere and it's not making sense, do ask.
Again, we can kind of see some questions there about not so much what we don't have, which is usually what we end up having to explain on most occasions, but what do we have? Records in Archives New Zealand can vary quite a lot in terms of material from any and every government agency from way back when. Some of those examples could be the Māori schools logbooks for Chatham Islands, as well as Māori Affairs Committee, the administration, whakapapa. We've also got housing sections, LINs plans, surveyor notes, court applications, alienation files, and then different, I guess, business documents in terms of when they've had to register. We have a Rapana movement, the Absolute Māori Established Church of Aotearoa Te Waipounamu Wharekauri records. We have certificate of titles, owners, as well as I guess series of letters and correspondence to different ministers and agencies. So it can get quite diverse in terms of the different paperworks, the different papers and records that we hold, as well as I guess photographs and AV that may have been collected as a part of those records. It really is a case of a bit of everything and everyone in the records. I can see that Di has also mentioned wills, so we do have probates held across our different repositories that hold those wills as well. Divorce agreements as well. If you're looking to get remarried, we may also have the divorce paperwork in our holdings. So it can get quite diverse in terms of what we do have. Is the early census with us? Rosie, do you have an answer for that one?
No, so as far as census records, they kept the statistics that they gleaned from the census, but not the actual forms, papers filled out. So yeah, I'm very sorry. It's a common question, and it does feel like a big gap for us to have. So yeah, the answer is no, but whether there could be some sort of population survey that might have been done on an iwi and could be somewhere is a possibility. I can only speak for our office in this case, where we do have the odd census data for a particular hapu, just a 1 year, one-off sort of thing, not regular every 3 years sort of thing. So yeah, there's a good chance that perhaps our other offices have similar.
I think the other side is we probably are missing some of our colleagues from across at National Library. Again, their holdings can be quite diverse in terms of what materials they have in publications, but also in the private journals and letters that they hold. And those are kind of a little bit of areas where we can overlap sometimes, where we retain the government records, but it's also been published in a series of personal collections. All that material, again, like archives, National Library do a lot of mahi around their digitisation and ensuring that there's there's a point of access online as well. I can see another question where it says, how far back do your maps date? Any pre-1868 for Wharekauri, Chatham Islands. Rosie, sorry to pick on your brain, Rosie.
Yeah, I am afraid I'm not too sure about that one, just with our map collection covering Canterbury, Westland, Nelson, Marlborough, but we certainly go to the 1850s, and so I wouldn't be surprised if there's similar, and perhaps held by the Wellington office, I would think. Yeah, and it's something that I can follow up on. I can think of people in research services and Wellington team that I can check in with that and email the appropriate contact tomorrow. That's fine. Happy to do so.
Also a question around the records of ships that visited the Chatham Islands, and do we have any of those records around the shipping records?
So it can be, you've sort of got to think of which government department would have been creating it. And so if it were me, I'd be looking into the sort of harbour master customs line of records and then drilling down that way to see what we've got. So it could be that there's a register of incoming and outgoing ships, whether there's crew lists or not, or passengers or lists or not, not too sure, but you'd hopefully have a register of some ingoing, outgoing.
Ka pai. And I guess in terms of any pātai or questions that came up from when you registered your interest in the webinar series, just some slight questions. What act do we operate under? So that's the Public Records Act 2005. Previously it was the Archives Act 1957. I'm getting some nods from my colleagues. I know my history. And as well as we have some questions around any information that people are interested in looking into with Archives New Zealand. So we'll get back in touch with you via email on the kaupapa that you're wanting to do some researching in our records around. So if there's kind of no other questions, I guess we'll start to summarize and wrap ourselves up. Are there any questions that Di or Gail or any comments that you guys would like to share?
Oh, kia ora, Gail. Just while Gail's having a think, I typed it in the wrong chat to host and panelists, but Debbie, your question about maps. Pukeariki has a map by Pamariki Raumoa that's dated about 1853, and that's digitised, and you can do a search there and it will come up and show you that map. And our teams talked a little bit about the work of the surveyors. So we did have quite a lot of early surveying that went on in Wharekauri, and it'd be worth having a bit of a look at who the surveyors were, and then perhaps we would be able to search under them and see what resources or what information they gathered about Wharekauri at that time, including any other maps. I'm not sure what date the map in the office is, Gail, but that's later, isn't it?
1868.
So I guess on behalf of Archives New Zealand, I'll just like to say thank you for everyone for getting involved and being able to share some of those questions and pick the brains of all of us and my colleagues as well. We're definitely here to be able to support and facilitate the access going further and being able to give a lot more information and share what we do in our offices and in how we look after our records. So we're definitely keen to hear from you as to what information you'd like to know more about. We, as I kind of mentioned at the very beginning, will follow up with all the links and answers and as well as the recording of this webinar session through email, and we'll send you back a little bit of a survey so that you can let us know what kaupapa or topic we'd like to take on our next webinar session, which will be on the 26th of April. Definitely, if it's something that you feel you'd like to share with more whānau members to get involved with, we'll share the link around even some more. But we'll definitely just keep these conversations going, and we're here to share what we do every day. So I will pass it
Just
back.
before we wrap up, Tyler, I would just like to say a couple of words. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone who joined tonight and participated in the conversation. I'd also like to mahi to Di Grinnell and those who have been supporting her, and especially our on-island champions, Kathy Thomas and Melody Iruira Fraser. So this project, He Matapihi no Mua, is one that's been in the throes for a while. It's about looking into the windows of the past of our tūpuna and really reaching in and examining to support us on who we are and where we came from. So the work that Dai's been doing alongside Archives Te Papa, Era Mea Katoa, has really been transformational, and we've yet to see the whole of it all come to fruition. The key to the success of these webinars, and you mentioned tonight's one of the 26th of April, there's two more at the last week of May and the last week of June, and we look forward to whānau going away and asking those questions of within their whānau and hapu about what they would like to see more. For example, some people were talking about Matarako School and the education through that as their tūpuna went to school in that native school out in that area. And the document, I see someone's posted up Shan's book, and there's a few Shan documents, but it's really important that we get the mita and the hua of our reo, of our tūpuna, as we should know where we've come from, which will help inform where we're going to. I'd like to mahi to you, Tyler, and the rest of the archives team in pulling this together and for lighting or planting the seed for us to water in between now and the next session, and come back with more. You know, we would have an opportunity to get a real me if we haven't already got one, and to do some more research and talk to our whānau and our kaumātua to unpack more of the kōrero. Kia ora rā.
Kia ora, Gail. I appreciate that so very much. I was hoping that George would make it back, but he hasn't, so if possible, I'm going to call upon our kaihotu Anahira, who I see is already unmuted, to wrap up our hui today, and then we will carry on with our evening.
Tēnā rā tātou te whānau kua hui mai nei, ki te whakarongo ki a are mai o koutou tāringa I wēnei wā. He mihi anō e tikana te kōrero, ngā mihi kua mihia ki a koe e tainau I ārehi tēnei nau I whakatakotohia te kaupapa o tō whānau a Ngāti Mutunga. Ki a koe hoki Gail, I tīmata ai, I huaki ai tō tātou hui, I te arawairua, kei konei mātou o te rua mahara I awhinatia ai a koutou katoa I tēnei wāhanga. Nō reira, ai e tikana ki a koutou katoa, pai te rongo ka tai te wā hei te rua te kauma ono o pipiri, ko tērā pai, mā koutou pēr o Wharekauri, hei reira te wā, ka oho mai, ka puta mai ngā whatu o matariki ki a tātou katoa, nō reira he mihi anō ki a koutou. Me noi tātou. Tērā te mauri kei te kahu o te rangi kei te tihi o ngā maunga whakahi o te ao. Kia wātea, kia māma tō tātou hine ngaro tō tātou wairua I te ara takatā. Ko te mihi tēnei kia koutou, kia ai o te mauri, kia tū te mauri ora, aha ko te aha kia tātou katoa. Nō reira, me mihi tēnei kia rungo, kia tāne, ki wera atu I awhinatia mai a tātou, I hopu kia ai ngā mahi tika o tātou katoa, he mauri tū, he mauri ai o, he mauri ora, ka ora haumi e hui e taiki.
Taiki.
Tēnā rā tātou.
Kia ora rā.
Ka kite everyone. Have a lovely evening, and we will be talking soon. Pōmari e.
Ai, pōmari e.